Road. Defense attorney. So if that happened, give me a call at 668-7223. That's 668-7223. I can also be found on the web at kaylorlaw.com. I don't practice family law. Quite honestly, it's just not the type of law that I enjoy. I love doing criminal defense. I wake up every morning and can't wait to get to the office to help the people that come to see me. But I don't want to do family law. But thankfully, I found somebody that has been a good friend of mine for many years and a partner at my office. Partner in terms of not like a loving partner in life.
Not like we need any benefits.
No benefits. No, we'll talk about that later with the mayor. But Mark McMann, tell him who you are and what you do for a living.
Mark McMann, McMann, PA, same location as Dave, 3001 Bartow Road. You can contact me, 863-393-9010 or McMannlaw.com. I do everything regarding family law. That's divorces, that's paternity actions, anything involving the children, including child support, time-sharing visitation, alimony, the whole gamut. We also do wills and trusts. Again, contact us at 863-393-9010.
Folks, if you tuned in, was it last week or the week before where I did almost the entire show is an overview of the prosecution of a personal injury case from beginning to end.
Last week.
Yeah, well, so I hope that I showed that I had at least some familiarity with the concept. And so if you happen to have any personal injury issues, certainly give us a call at 668-7223. I began my career at the state attorney's office and then did criminal defense for a couple years and then did insurance defense for almost 4 years before I opened my own practice. And so probably about 85% is criminal defense, the other 15% is personal injury. We are one of those firms, though, Mark. Some attorneys, if you walk through their door, even if they have no idea what they're doing, they will take the business.
Yeah.
We do not take on cases that we do not feel comfortable doing. We clearly can handle any criminal case in the vast majority of personal injury cases, but if it's a med mal case, we're apt to send those sort of things out because those are so difficult to handle successfully for the injured party. So, like I said, don't be afraid to give us a call at 668-7223. Now, we're done talking about us. We need to talk about the man.
We have a special guest.
Special guest. This would be, I think, your third time here on Law Talk. He's turning into a bit of a groupie here for Law Talk. You can't get enough of it, huh?
What's that?
Who's counting?
Well, we are. It's a special day in my life every time that the mayor of Lakeland, the largest city in Polk County, comes to our show. Mayor Gal Fields, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Mayor Fields was elected to be the face of the city of Lakeland back in December of 2009, and he has served very admirably since that date. Before then, he was on the city commission, for a little over 17 years. Not only is he a public servant, he is a successful businessman. For many, many years, he was associated with Allstate Insurance. He now has an independent agency, Fields Insurance and Financial Group here in Lakeland. Once again, thank you for joining us. Mark, we're going to let you take over from here.
Well, I wanted to talk to you. Talk a little bit about your background, how you got into business, and how that has formed your political ideology and the way you look at the world.
Well, business school graduate from Polk State College. It was Polk Community College at that time.
Actually, when you went, it was probably Polk Junior, wasn't it?
Well, it had changed to Polk Community College. People were still saying Polk Junior.
Why are you busting on his age?
I don't know, man, because he's like the only one I can make fun of. Because he's got me by a few years.
And then on to USF in Tampa. There was no Lakeland campus at that time, and got started in the business arena, working for Campbell Soup. Their Juice Bowl facility. Juice Bowl was owned by Campbell Soup during those years, and later transferred to the Campbell Sales Company later on as some restructuring started occurring within the Campbell Soup Company family of companies. I eventually found my way to the insurance business. Started out in a management training program, and felt that the entrepreneur route was better for me, and transitioned out of that and became an Allstate agent, and started out in an agency partnership in North Lakeland, and eventually moved to a solo practice in downtown Lakeland, and had been there downtown from August of '91 when downtown was really just starting to go through its redevelopment. I had great confidence in that redevelopment plan because I actually served on the Downtown Plan Steering Committee that gave advice and input to the City Commission back then. So I had been engaged and involved in politics, but as someone interacting with my elected officials, volunteered in a number of campaigns, be it at the state legislative level, local city races, judicial races, and congressional races. But I was always a volunteer that picked and chose what good candidate I thought would be a great representative of the people.
Let me jump in there, right, if you don't mind, Mayor.
Sure.
You said a great candidate. Were you more concerned about the party? Because I know you're a registered Republican and have been for a long time. Were you more concerned about the party or the candidate back in the early stages?
Candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I learned early on, particularly when you're volunteering in campaigns and you're going around and hearing candidates at all the different stops, that there are some people who have one label and they are not what the label says, and there are people who have the other label and they're not what that label says. Some people choose the label to get elected.
Mm-hmm.
They are not what they say they are on the surface, and when you follow them around, you get a chance to know them. When you ask them questions away from the microphone, it's amazing what the answers are that you can get. And then when you hear them, when the show starts and when the microphone's on, as I call it. But it was a great learning experience for me to understand that you can have a great quality candidate and they may be in a party different from yours. But that's okay too. This is America, and if the country comes first, the party shouldn't matter.
Now, you just said that you're a Republican. What makes you that, or why do you identify with the Republican Party, and what about them, what about their platform or ideals that made you choose to be with that party?
Yeah, I would say to you, I was in college when President Reagan was elected president. And for me, seeing what he identified as a very compelling vision for what could make America great again and for us to retake our place and prominence in the world was one that was very attractive. And that was the time period that I decided to find out, well, what is this thing called the Republican Party? Because at the time I registered as a Democrat because that's what my parents were.
Yeah, everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you did when you turn 18. Yeah, I'm going down there to get registered to vote. I'm going to do the selective service registration. And then you get down there, you're supposed to choose a box. Well, I chose one, and it was based on what my parents were. But when I began learning and studying about the parties and what each one represented, I realized that the way our parents raised us was more in line with the Republican Party philosophy as opposed to the Democratic Party philosophy. Now, I never made the switch until after I was actually out of college and working, because I began asking adults whose opinion I respected, why were they registered in the various parties that they were. It was very insightful for me, and I made the decision then. It wasn't a big, bold announcement, but I filled out the change of party card, and I just did that.
How long ago, when was that you did that?
Gosh, that would have been at some point in the mid-'80s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago. I mean, there are a lot of us didn't make the switch until the late 90s, early 2000s.
Right. Yeah, it was back then. Matter of fact, I think it was either 87 or 88.
What was it, you mentioned that you started out, you'd working for Juice Bowl, and then you made the choice to go on ahead and be an entrepreneur yourself. What made you go ahead and just throw it out there and take a chance? Because I did that, recently with my own, and there's something very empowering about it, and something that's,
right.
You never want to do
A little frightening. You're kind of walking the tightrope without a net.
Right. But then once you get past it, and you continue to do that for years, I'm sure, after the fact. I mean, there are
Right.
good years, bad years, but what about it made you go that route?
Both grandfathers were entrepreneurs. My father's father was a farmer. I mean, that's about as entrepreneurial as it gets, because you sure don't control the weather.
Right.
And there's a lot at risk. And my mother's father, he was an entrepreneur as well. Wherever he saw a need, and it may change from one thing to another, he would find a way to fill that need and make a market opportunity out of it in a segregated community. Because he moved here and moved all of his brothers and sisters here from Sparta, Georgia to Lakeland.
Mayor, we've got to take a break, and we're
Yes,
right
sir.
back.
We'll be right back with more of Law Talk.
All right, welcome back to Law Talk, sponsored by the Kaylor Law Group in McMann, PA. We're going to get right back into it. We have Mayor Gal Fields in the studio with us today. Mark, keep going.
Yeah, one of the things we were talking about is your political philosophy,
Right.
your ideology. How does that work, or how do you apply that, or how does it apply to you being the mayor and serving in that capacity?
Well, to me, it applies very strongly. Key concept of that philosophy, though, is being willing to listen. Not everybody's going to agree, and we have to actively demonstrate that we're willing to hear all voices, because our founding fathers said that whether or not you agree with someone, you should defend to the death their right to be heard or to say their piece. Well, today we're struggling with that in America, on at least allowing people, even those we don't agree with, to say how they feel. Now, that doesn't mean you do what they ask you to do, but you at least ought to hear them out. And that's part of what public service is about, and that's important. I mean, to me, that is an important part of governing, because people having a chance to be heard is important to them, because that's part of what the democracy is about. And then you deliberate, you discuss, you debate, and sometimes it may be a heated debate. And at the end of that, you got to make a decision. Yes, your values and your beliefs factor into it, but I think an important value and belief has to be the willingness to hear all sides of the issue and let every voice be heard.
There has been, in my opinion, I think most people would agree, a deterioration in the civility of the public discourse. Certainly you see it at the national level, both sides are guilty. Has it trickled down to the local level?
Sure it has.
That's unfortunate.
Has it gotten worse over the 17, well, I guess now 19 and a half years?
It absolutely has. This is a different America, both at the national, state, and local level, than it was when I started serving in public
How much of that
office.
do you think has to do with, in my opinion, there has been, I don't know, a lack of discipline, a lack of structure in the family unit, where people just don't respect their elders, they don't respect those in positions of authority as much as they should. Do you attribute any of that to that, or do you think it's just the way things have gone for whatever reason?
Well, I think you see the lack of a respect for authority going away at a number of levels. If you think back, there was a time in this country that if you voted for someone as president and your person didn't win, or if you voted for someone as governor, they didn't win, whoever did win, they were still your president, they were still your governor.
Right.
Today, that's not the case.
Yeah.
You hear people brag about, I didn't vote for that idiot, and he's not my president, he's not my governor.
You've seen elected officials say this.
You've seen elected officials say that. And guess who else sees it? Our children see it. So when they don't like what the principal or the teacher tells them to do at the school, they act just like they see their parents and other adults act. I didn't choose them. They didn't vote on that person as principal or as teacher. So why should they have to do what they tell them to do? Why should they respect authority? They get that same behavior demonstrated live and in living color on TV for them, and they emulate it. And then we wonder why we're having kids act up in school. Well, they're doing the same thing they see the adults do, including their own parents.
When do you think the shift change was? I mean, when did you finally wake up and realize, wait a minute, something's terribly wrong, or was it something that was rather slow?
Well, I can distinctly recall in the mid-'90s at, I believe it was the mid to late 90s, at one of our city commission retreats, Lance DeHaven Smith, Florida State University, was making a presentation to us about the loss of civility at the local level and how it was exponentially increasing. And he was seeing it as he was doing work for local governmental bodies across the state. Well, of course, at the time you were thinking, I'm just seeing it here in Polk County. Well, here's somebody who's visiting cities all over the state in all 67 counties, and it's the same thing. And then as you interact with other people outside of Florida, they're seeing it across the country as well. And it has just continued to go in that direction. And to me, most of it is because everyone is putting their own interests first, and not the country's, or not the state's, or not the community's. And if we put the country first, it's much easier to have the debate. Because you can have a compromise on where you are on positions, and you don't have to necessarily compromise your values. But if you're not even going to listen to the other side, that's one of the important things of what a democracy is about.
Mayor, when I hear you talk, I mean, I've been around you. You're a man of humility. You've got you've raised a family. You've got a successful wife. You've got a successful business. Sometimes, I know what goes on at City Hall. I know some of the animosity that must go on, and obviously the politicking that goes on its political position. But why do you still do it? I mean, what is the draw? It's not like you crave the power. You're just such a mellow, laid-back guy and a dedicated public service. Why do you still do it after all this time? What drives a man like you to continue to run for public office? You're not doing it for the money. You're not doing it for the prestige. I mean, it's an amazing thing to witness.
Well, I would say that goes back to my family. The example that I saw from my parents, from various aunts and uncles, and others in my church, it was important that you give back to your community. And at the local level, serving in public office to me is really no different than serving on the board of a not-for-profit. It is, it is community service. And you're right. If you're volunteering on a local board, you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you believe you can make a difference and you can give back and contribute in some way. In that way, if you're helping to build your community, you're dealing with some of the issues and challenges that the community is facing that's affecting the lives of people, and you're doing it right there at the local level. And to me, it's the parable of the Good Samaritan in action. If we walk by on the other side of the road, as the pastor and the religious leader did, and leave the victim there to suffer unto themselves, then we have failed to do what the Lord instructed us to do in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Because the Good Samaritan was not the government, the Good Samaritan was not the cousin to the victim, nor someone who knew them, but actually was the natural enemy of them. And we were instructed to go and do likewise. And giving back in some way, whether it be in local elected office or in community service, to me is a way that I can help lift up others and make sure that I'm doing some good to leave the place better than I found it.
That's amazing, by the way. Very well put. We tend to have, do you think it's possible that we're going to be able to reverse it? We were talking a little bit about the fact that civility is lost, and it's because children are seeing their parents behave certain ways, and it's just, they learn it, they grow up,
Right.
they do the same thing. Is it reversible at this point? I mean, my mother's a teacher, and she says, children or parents younger than I, they don't pay much attention to the kids, and they set the example that you just described. Because it seems as if, I was raised by a World War II, my grandfather pretty much taught me most of what I know, my mother, but they taught you that. If
Right.
you're not taught that, it's like foreign to you. So
Right.
at some point, the tipping point tips the other way. Is it possible we can reverse that?
Yeah, I believe it is. It is going to take a mixture of people in leadership positions to say, wait a minute, enough of this. We can yell and scream at the best of them. But how can we tell other countries how democracy is supposed to work when we act like we do with one another? How can we tell them if you put your country first, you can make a lot of these differences of opinion work out when we're not practicing it here? But we're going to have leaders to step up and say very firmly, we got to put the country first again. And we can work through the differences of opinion. We can have the debates. But if we put the country first, it becomes a much easier thing to go through. We're going to have people who support candidates hold them accountable for that behavior. They can't be one issue supporters. They can't just say, I don't care what you do on everybody else's issue, you just go take care of mine. That's part of the problem. You have elected officials who will do whatever they think they got to do to get elected. And you got these whole collection of individuals who want control of that elected official as opposed to having someone that's going to put the country, the state, or their community first. And it's all of our failure to do what we're supposed to do collectively that's going on.
Let's go ahead and take a break now. We'll come back and we'll start talking about some of the issues that are confronting the City Commission.
Okay.
Welcome back to Law Talk, sponsored by the Kaylor Law Group in McMann, PA. Ronnie Ocean, he's a nice guy. He's in my Rotary Club.
Is he?
Yeah, he's a great guy, and he gets a lot more publicity here on WLKF. Why is that?
He must be slipping Dan extra money on
That
the side.
could be. I don't know what the deal is. Anyway, he's a great guy. He puts on a great show. But we've got another good show for you here today. We've got Mayor Galfields. Mayor, I want to ask you a question. We're going to move into some specific topics. You are seeing, or at least I am seeing, I'm sure you are as well, at the state level, a push towards, when it comes to retirement, moving away from defined benefit packages based upon cost or other arguments that they're making, which I really don't understand since all of our defined packages, all our defined retirements are fully funded. By the way, that is anybody that tells you that the Florida retirement system has not been fully funded, that is not correct. It is in great shape, folks. But my concern is that I've spoken with a number of folks in law enforcement, a lot of guys in their 20s and early 30s that are thinking about a career change. And they're also concerned about the people that might be coming behind them because they are concerned about the tone that they are seeing, mainly at the state level. I'm not seeing so much at the local level. And the part of the reason they went into law enforcement, because you've got to remember, these are the guys that run towards the situations that all the rest of us would run away from.
Right.
Part of the reason that they took that oath and they went and they do the things that they do is because at the end of it, they're going to have that defined benefit for the rest of their lives. And we are seeing a push away from that. And I'm curious what your thoughts are, as you know, in the general scheme, and specifically, if you want to go into it, what's in store for somebody coming into law enforcement or to the fire department or whatever the
Right.
case may be at the city of Lakeland.
Well, as far as the city of Lakeland is concerned, we have, at one base level of benefit, all the public employees are treated the same as far as what the benefit plan is. And then public safety employees, police and fire, there are additional taxes that are levied on your insurance policies you pay in the state of Florida to fund a higher level of benefit that goes only to police and fire. And so that additional benefit, because of them putting their lives at risk every day, is funded by these additional taxes that are levied through insurance products statewide. The challenge is that there was a time in this country interest rates returned were a lot higher than they are today. And you, with fewer dollars, could buy a lot more benefit based on what the actuary said. Well, today, in an interest rate environment and a stock market performance environment, is very different from what it was 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. The same money or same percentage of dollars in earnings are not going to buy the same level of benefit. And a defined benefit just says that if you make $100 at the peak of your career and you work X number of years, you're going to get some percentage of that as your retirement plan or monthly pay for the rest of your life.
What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it as long as the taxpayers can afford the percentage you
Right.
choose. And when the taxpayers can't afford Y percentage, but they can afford Y minus some other number, then you have to start lowering the benefit. Because it does the public employee no good for me to promise you one level of benefit, but that check doesn't clear the bank when I write it when you get to retirement. That's a bad story to give somebody. You can only promise what you can pay for. And the taxpayers can only pay for only what they can afford. And so we have to make sure that, yes, we keep our promises that are made, but we got to make sure whatever promise we make, we can afford to keep it.
And I'm a staunch fiscal conservative. I mean, I understand that there can perhaps needs to be some contribution. They got to have some skin in the game.
Well, there's a psychological impact to
Sure.
that, too.
But
You mentioned the person's
there
contributing.
seems to be this demonizing, and like I said, it's not so much at the local level; it's more the state level. And I can tell you, I've spoken with folks from various law enforcement agencies, and you know that is not what they bargained for. And I'm just concerned that we're going to get what we pay for.
I understand that, but a retirement plan where no one has to contribute anything to it, that it's all on the taxpayers, long-term, generation after generation, it is not sustainable.
Oh, we're seeing a lot of that throughout the
Right.
country, but in the state of Florida, we are still in pretty good shape, and the city of Lakeland is in pretty good shape, is it not?
Well, the city of Lakeland has always had a plan that the employees contributed to. They've
Right.
always had skin in the game.
Mhm.
And during those years when they were putting skin in and other public employees were putting nothing in, it was a bone of contention with
Sure.
them. Why should I be here in Lakeland when I could cross the county line and work for another agency and not have to contribute and increase my take-home pay? That was a valid argument. Well, now that has changed to the point that existing employees, the attempt in the legislation was to change the promise that was made to them. They were hired under one plan, and there was a decision made to try to change it. Well, we've not done that in Lakeland. If you were hired under Plan A, that's your plan.
Mhm.
If you were hired when we changed to Plan B, because we had to change it based on what we could afford and sustain, that's your plan. Same thing was going to occur with Plan C. And we're giving people the ability to choose if a mix of a defined benefit or a defined contribution plan works best for you. You have the ability to do the analysis on it and choose what works best for your financial situation. And we're trying to do that in a setting where we're making sure that whatever we offer to employees, that the taxpayers can afford it and we can sustain it over time so we can keep our promise.
Well, I appreciate. I mean, you guys are certainly very, very good fiscal stewards. I just, at the end of the day, I get the fact that I don't have that guaranteed benefit when I retire, then Social Security, we'll see if it's going to be there. But I'm also not the one that runs into the burning buildings and that sort of thing. And so I just, the tone, it seems unnecessarily harsh. I think that we are gradually moving away from the defined benefit, but I'm not one of those folks that thinks that we need to abandon it altogether. And I think there are some people who do believe in that philosophy. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. All right, Mark, what you got next?
What about Lakeland Electric?
Yes, sir.
We talked about this a little bit offline during the commercial, but what's going on? Is it being sold? We saw an article in the paper, I guess it was over the weekend, which alluded to that, but tell us
Right.
what the status is of that.
Yeah, I would say this. The headline on the article really misrepresented what the nature of the meetings are that are going to take place.
The Ledger made a mistake.
Well, I didn't say they made a mistake. I said the headline that was chosen would lead you to a very different conclusion than what is actually going to occur. We've had a group that have approached the city and the city commission about lowering the threshold of what it takes to actually initiate a sale of Lakeland Electric. And for some of them, the premise is based upon the belief that a governmental unit should not be in a business that the private sector should be running and making a profit at. Now, that is a philosophical discussion that you can have anywhere in America in a variety of industries and get people excited about it. In the history of Lakeland, when the city of Lakeland began the electric utility, it was at a time when the private market said Lakeland's too small to put capital at risk and to bring electricity as a new technology as it came around in this neck of the woods. And so the government brought it so that the people would have that benefit. And then at one point it sold Lakeland Electric to the private sector. Years later it realized that that was not a good thing to do, bought it back, and began making ever-increasingly difficult obstacles in the city charter to ever allow it to be sold again. So, and the last change was either done in the late 50s or early 60s. Predates my birth, let alone my time in office. But it's where we are today. And there are also people who believe that in the future, Lakeland Electric is too small to be able to compete and provide a fair rate or a competitive rate for electricity to its customers.
Let me ask you that question, and I don't know the answer. Are Lakeland Electric rates, out of the norm, or are they, in terms of what is
The
considered a
average.
fair rate, the average? That's the gripe from some of the folks that own commercial properties, that they're being the rates too high. Are we within the realm of reasonable?
Okay. When you look at the rates, the published rates around the state in all the rate categories, Lakeland Electric is either number 2 or number 3 lowest in every category in the state of Florida. Now, I'm not saying electricity is cheap, but if you want to compare us in a competitive setting, we're number 2 or number 3 in every category, and that's after the fuel adjustment charge increase that we approved today.
I did not know that.
So what are the reasons that you said that those who are for privatization or for selling it off say that Lakeland Electric in the future will not be able to compete? What reasons? How exactly are they saying that? Why are they saying that? Like, what about it makes them unable?
Well, for some, they say bigger is better and inherently will be a lower price. The private sector can always do it better than the public sector, or that the public sector should not be competing in an arena where there are privates available. And like I said, there are no wrong answers here. You can have the debate and the discussion, but right now, the utility belongs to the citizens of Lakeland. They're the shareholders. And if they want to sell their shares to a private company, that's their call. I work for them.
Let me ask you, Mayor, from a philosophical standpoint, as a fiscal conservative, as a Republican, I kind of agree with the position that the government should not be in the business of providing services that a private sector can do. But there are exceptions to that rule, and I'm having a hard time coming up with a reason why we should sell Lakeland Electric. I mean, it seems to me like they do a great job, and it has been a financial boon for the city of Lakeland. We have this magnificent park system and all the other services. It offsets the property taxes. How does that? I know that you're not going to say one way or another where you stand on this, because you're not there yet. You haven't made up your mind, and you're a long way away. But do you understand sort of the how I'm torn on this issue?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say it to you this way. Depending upon where you are in that point in time, when the electric utility was started in Lakeland, the private sector said no thanks. And the role of government is to do that which the private sector is not willing to do. Well, to have electricity in Lakeland, that meant the government had to provide it. And in communities like Lakeland, it was either your public utility was formed to do it because the citizens came together and said, we want electricity like Tampa has. TECO provided it to Tampa. Well, the government did it in Lakeland. And in other communities, it was an electric cooperative that did it, so that people could have the technology and the benefit of what had been invented in America. That's just how you do it. Now, today, if we weren't in the electric utility business, there is no way I'd recommend that the government got into it.
I get you.
Okay? But given where the decision was made in time, we now have an asset that the people own.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to sell it, we'd have to sell it if the people say that they want to, just like the shareholders of IBM or FedEx. If they want to sell the company, they will vote to sell it. Well, that's who has to vote to sell Lakeland Electric. That's how it works in the private sector, and those same rules and principles apply here. We have not made a decision to sell it, but it's okay for an American citizen to come up and say, I think you ought to talk about it. In America, you get to talk about those things.
And that's essentially what's happening here.
That's essentially what's happening. It doesn't mean a decision's been made. It just means someone is exercising their constitutional right to address their public officials and say, I want you to talk about
Well,
it.
this is an important issue, and I understand that it deserves to be heard. But I did make it real clear, because to the extent that some people might overread or overly infer what they saw in the newspaper, no decisions have been made at all.
No decision's been made, and if one had been made today, it would probably take us about 7 to 8 years to complete the transaction. And there has been no transaction like what's being talked about in the paper that's been completed in America that I'm aware of. The closest thing to it was in Vero Beach. They wanted to sell it. They were motivated sellers. They had problems with the utility, and the transaction fell apart. Florida Power and Light wanted to buy it, and 5 years into it, they don't have a completed deal.
All right, folks, we'll be right back with Mayor Galfields.
Hello, I'm Mark McMann of McMann, PA. If you have any questions or any needs when it comes to wills, trusts, estates, probate, give me a call at 863-393-9010 or visit me at McMannLaw.com.
All right, welcome back to the last segment of Law Talk, sponsored by the Kaylor Law Group. That's Kaylor. That's particularly important, Mark. We've got an election coming up in August.
That's true.
And there's going to be a Kaylor on the ballot.
Running for judge, circuit judge.
Yep, Mark Kaylor. I encourage you to vote for him on August 14th. There's a number of different races coming up. Bob Rhodes running for county judge. Bob used to do the show with me. He's been on the show many times. He will make a tremendous county judge if given the opportunity. I like Bill Seitz a lot. He's running for one of the circuit seats. The other candidates in that race are legitimate good candidates. Christine Thornhill and Larry Holmes, both of whom would do a good job if elected. I just happen to be close to Bill. He's got the temperament for it. He's got the experience. The same with Bob Rhodes, and most assuredly the same with Mark Kaylor.
Of course, you better say that.
Absolutely. Now, Mark, Mark McMann here, you're a solid conservative, diehard Republican. And who are you supporting? I think you're pretty much the same three, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Soon to be, hopefully, Judge Mark Kaylor, Bob Rhodes, and, of course, Bill Seitz.
All right, let's get back to our distinguished guest, the Honorable Mayor Gal Fields. Let's finish up. Mark, there was a hot topic.
There's a very hot topic. I think it kind of it started in April and it really exploded in May, and it has to do with same-sex benefits.
Right.
And there were a couple of votes that dealt with whether or not there's going to be a study,
Right.
and the cost of the study. And I think there's a first round of votes the first vote where you voted against this and had to do with same-sex couples, benefits to them, a study on that. And then there was a second vote about a week or two later, maybe.
No, same meeting.
Was it the same meeting? Okay. That dealt with, and you voted for this. Well, if we're going to go ahead and do a cost analysis of benefits to same sex, we're just going to have to do it to not only same sex, but also those of the opposite sex. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, initially we had the request that came before us from someone who is not a city employee, heterosexual, male, married. And initially we said, okay.
A lot of time on his hands.
Citizen asking to be heard. We'll hear what he has to say. And then more importantly, we needed to be able to answer for all our employees what benefits are available to everyone right now without doing any of these things. Right now, if you want to place a same-sex partner as the beneficiary on your pension or your life insurance, you can do that. There's nothing new required to do that. The only thing that was missing is whether or not they could be included on the health insurance.
Wait a minute, a same-sex partner, if I had a partnership, even though civil unions are not recognized in the state of Florida, and I passed away, he could gather my pension benefits for
Yeah, if you name them as a beneficiary.
Oh.
Because the law doesn't determine, they don't tell you who you leave it to. You can leave it to a trust, you can leave it to you.
You're talking about a
You know,
defined monthly benefit, or are you talking about a settlement amount?
If you choose a period certain on your pension, it's going to pay for that period certain.
Okay.
Okay? When retirement comes. If you choose for all of your life, then it's just all of your life.
I got you.
If you live 2 years. If you choose for all of your life and all of your spouse's life, well, they got to be your spouse.
Okay, you got to be, okay, I got you.
But if you just choose...
Give me 20 years, or give me
Yeah.
10 years, or whatever. I can
Right.
give
If
anybody
you
I want.
choose a fixed period of time and you die 2 years into that 20-year period of time, 18 goes to somebody.
I got you, I understand. All right,
And if you
keep
don't name anyone who's going to go to your estate, then you lawyers can figure out where it
Divvy it
goes.
up there.
All right.
So they get that.
Right.
Okay, but we're talking about something different here with benefits. So what happened?
After giving the issue a chance to be heard, and we lay out what people can in fact have right now without any changes, then there was the passionate plea by some members of the commission that we should do the study, the formal study, and look at what the actual cost is to provide the actuarial cost to provide the benefit. It could not be piggybacked on an update to an actuarial study that we're currently doing. It actually had to be a separate study. And so the vote was whether or not we do that. And it was a 4-3 vote, or actually, I'm sorry, I was not present for that initial vote. It was a
You
4-2.
ducked the hot vote, huh?
No, I was actually out of town representing
I'm just
the city.
joking around. I know that you would never miss
Yeah, it was. So you're right. It was a separate meeting. It was a 4-2 vote to do the study. The next meeting, when I was back, I asked them to reconsider because it was in a work session, not in a formal commission meeting. And then it was a 4-3 vote
'Cause you then
to not
voted
do the
against it.
study. That's where I voted against doing the study. And then once it had been decided that we're going to do the study, the next question was, what would be the scope of the study? And the three of us that voted against doing the study felt that since the majority has decided we're going to do it, then we believe you should include, for those including heterosexual couples that decide that they want the benefit and they have not chosen to be married. And so the debate then revolved around, well, since legally they can get married, this shouldn't apply to them. Because now we're only making sure that those who legally cannot get married can get this benefit. And that's going to continue to be a bone of contention about how you do that, because the issue then becomes marriage and the definition of marriage. Because if you're saying your bright line is, well, this group can get married and this group can't, I'm going to help this group out.
It just further bolsters in their minds the idea that we do need to have or same-sex marriage.
Was your vote
Well-
against this social policy? Was it economics? I mean, what were your thoughts in terms of this? A little bit of both, maybe?
It's a mix of both. And one of the additional concerns I have is that for those people who place marriage in high regard, both from the standpoint they believe marriage is between one man and one woman, well, if you're going to get into redefining marriage, how do we stop it from being on the same-sex benefits? If it's heterosexual couples that can't get married, well, guess what? A guy can't get married to two women either.
Right.
It's called polygamy. But what if he decides that, well, the three of us are going to live together and I want them on my benefits? How do I exclude that? How do I exclude a man and a woman from having the same, what we're saying would be same-sex benefits? Because just as sure as we set the new policy, somebody's going to come, they're a heterosexual couple, and they're going to say, how can you do this for them? And they're not married.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can't do it for me, and I'm not married.
You got
It's a
legal
slippery slope.
challenges and slippery slope.
Yeah.
Slippery
So,
slope.
so if that's what the commission has decided they're going to do, how do you say two other people that decide to live together can't have it either? Or how do you say a woman that wants two guys on her benefit that are going to live with her can't have it? I mean, it becomes a very convoluted argument, but I also believe you diminish those who are in fact married, who also hold the responsibility for procreation.
Folks, Lakeland is in good hands with,
Absolutely.
with Mayor Galfields, and I thank you for joining us. Once again, we hope that you will come back. In the weeks to come, we're going to have Congressman Dennis Ross, FDLE agent Tommy Ray, who recently retired, and many more exciting and interesting guests for your listening pleasure. Until next week, this is David Kaylor on behalf of Mark McMann, thanking you for tuning in to Law Talk.
Hello, I'm Mark McMann. If you have any questions about the episode that you just saw, you can contact us on our website, lawtalkflorida.com, or contact me at my email address, mmcmann@mcmannlaw.com.